Good morning, y'all. So today, instead of covering Agent Wise, we are covering 2026 guard contract. The reason being, Ashley is sick. Um, Unfortunately, she had to go emergency room last night due to dehydration. So y'all hydrate up and stay warm. So we're go. So because the guard contract is 3 hour, I had condensed this version really short due to time constraint. So if you guys don't have any question, and for those of you that have already taken my 2026 guard contract, this is maybe a redundancy, but good platform for you to ask any question at this point. So let's go over what is 2026 GAR contract, and just a little preface on GAR and what it does is that every year as our industry change, as we're into a legal liability or any issues with the general public or the environment that we're in, GAR look at all that and look at the language of the GAR form and see what can we do to improve or reflect the current trend that we're in. And a lot of times, sometimes it can be a special step and what have you to help with the situation we're in. Just like during pandemic time, we have escalation clause. I don't think anybody's doing an escalation clause right now. We're doing more repairs now than we were back in pandemic. So that's what guard form does for you. And it's good to know because you're ahead of the game. If you don't know, you might miss out some few things. So in 2026, we have 6 different forms in GAR. One new special stipulation and one special stipulation deleted because the NAR settlement as it does not apply anymore. The 6 new forms are exclusive. This one I really like. Exclusive co-listing seller brokerage engagement agreement. The F331, which is unsafe property disclosure and hold harmless. The F334, buying property sight unseen. We had a lot of that during pandemic. This kind of protects the agent when they're working with investors or folks that are unable to come down Georgia but is moving. F528, holding notice to all party notice. And that's a good one from a brokerage standpoint, because oftentimes when we have issue with earnest money, we have to create a form and different things like that. This actually address the issue with a check mark, which we all like to do. So in the commercial form, exclusive commercial tenant buyer brokerage engagement agreement, we haven't had that in the past. So the GARF committee, the form committee this year was heavily concentrated with a gentleman named Mike Nelson. He is a leasing specialist, been in the industry for a very long time, managed thousands of units. And so a lot of leasing got improved. And unfortunately, I'm not going to cover a whole lot of that just because of time restraint. If you guys want to know all the nitty gritty, please come to my CE class. And also the last one is commercial purchase and sale agreements. For a lot of you that are trying to break into commercial, this is actually a great form. It's all the contingencies and stuff like that that normally when you're not a commercial agent you don't think about, because with every industry is different on a commercial platform, and therefore it kind of is a good checklist for you. Let's talk about special stipulation. We eliminate SS 110, no commission owed by the buyer. Per NAR lawsuit, we don't do our job for free anymore. Never has, never will. And so therefore that special stip is eliminated. Okay, you can rebate your client every time, but you can't say there's no commission, because at the end of the day, you still have to pay your broker their transaction fee and FMLS if applicable, or whatever fees that your brokerage has set up. Okay, so you're not here to do a transaction and go in debt. The other one was one new special step walkthrough list, which is nice because not everywhere in US a municipality is require a certificate of occupancy, COs. So we'll talk about that when we get there. At any time, if y'all have any question, please unmute yourself and ask. You can do it either through. I'll try to look at the chat box, but if not, you can just kind of notify me if you don't mind. All right, on the guard, every time we do changes, we do universal changes throughout multiple forms. One of them, statute of limitation. So every foreign reference a statute of limitation, we modify to 1 year. Last year was 2 years. The reason why they did that, Georgia state law has a 2-year statute of limitation. So before that, it was 7 year, which is based on federal. But last year, I think last year or the year before, we changed it to 2 year to accommodate state. But the guard committee form looked at it and said, why are we doing 2 years when we change our form every year? So we actually modified it to 1 year. So this is to help the broker and agents to be not as much in liability, just because our industry is always changing from year to year. So we changed all the wording was his commission to compensation. Instead of saying paying, we changed to offering, because paying sounds like a demanding word, where offering is a mutually agreed upon language. We capitalize all the defined terms like notice, buyer's broker, banking days, etc. So we change from notices to notice because you're only giving one notice at a time. We modify in date field by X amount day of 2020, whatever year you're in. So let's talk about specific universal changes. We talked about protection period, brokerage and customer agreement, warranty, purchase and sale agreement, and option agreement, right to extend closing date, purchase and sale. I know this was a lot. You're like, what? But we'll see the sample in a minute. Purchase and sale agreement and option agreement, holder earns money, purchase and sale agreement, and agency disclosure in the purchase and sale agreement and option agreement. Disclaimer, very much the same for most of it. You can see disclaimer, entire agreement, property, delivery is all in purchase and sale, whereas the other two are added to the option agreement. Instruction to seller in completing this agreement, seller property disclosure. We'll visit that in a few minutes. How the statement should be used by a buyer. That is a good one because, oftentimes we get seller disclosure. We get maybe a language for the seller, but we don't really give notice to the buyers that how disclosure is being used. So we'll go over that when we get there. Another one, universal change financing contingency, special approval, use of approval lender and loan denial letter. That's important, okay? Right to seller request evidence. All these are changed in the financing contingency. Any questions so far? This is just overall, okay? Let's go down to the protection period. We added the language and protection period. How many of y'all during pandemic actually show the property virtually? If not, do a reel or Facebook Live or just FaceTime them. I know I did. I sold one that way. So this actually, in the protection period for you on the brokerage engagement agreement, it actually protects you for those work done. Showing property to buyer virtually shall include showing the buyer the property by video or sending a video of the tour of the property to the buyer. And that is not included in protection period. All right. In section B, we basically change a lot of language to make sense because sometimes a lot of these are written what we call Old English. And now we made it very plain and simple. So when you read it, there's no question about the language. And as you can see, there's a lot of changes in here. Once again, section B is a reflective of section A, the fill in blank that we do. And here, what I thought was interesting, they revise it, that contract contain, there shall be no protection period if seller and broker mutually terminate this agreement or to expire and seller sign another exclusive brokerage engagement with another broker and the property is then sold during the term of the agreement with that seller's broker. So once your client signed another exclusive with somebody else, the protection period may expire because the new buyer was not procured by you. Okay, so there's no money owed during that protection period. All right, in here, they basically rewrote the whole entire thing on authorization to show unlisted property during protection period because the way it was written before, it did not make sense. So I'm not going to go through all this, and you'll see that form when you get it next year on January 1st. But the language is there to clarify more what the expectation of representing the buyer as a client to an unlisted property. Warranty. We changed the language in both the commercial purchase and sale, lot purchase, land, new construction, and option agreement. So we added this language here that the warranty from the seller exempt driveway, wall, fence, mailbox, or walkway. Does anybody have any idea why they do that? Why they did that? Let's say you're a builder, and when you build this property, here's a marker for all the plats. And the builder wasn't watching what they're doing, and therefore they build a driveway that technically crossed the lot. So what they're saying, they're not warranted that driveway. And sometimes when you have a wall, like a retaining wall, and over time it may have cut in the builder likes to build right on the line. And so over time, the retaining wall may lean over just a little bit, and that leaning may cause an encroachment. So same thing as fence and mailbox. Okay. So a lot of time there were multiple incidents where a buyer buys a house and the fence was put up by the prior seller. And because the buyer did not do a survey, did not know the fence was encroaching on neighbor's property. So what they're saying is that we're not warranting that portion of the warranty. Okay. Same thing as mailbox. I know that sounds weird, but there's a reason for that mailbox. Sometime may be on the wrong side of the road. Especially in an area that is not neighborhood, that's a landfill lot and what have you. And then you'll find out very soon because you won't have any mail coming to your house, and you wonder why everybody else's mailbox is across the street. So, but anyway, that has happened in the past. Any question on warranty? So we are exempting those items, okay, from the warranty, just because we have a lot of closing that was being held up over what they feel like is a minor issue. And also, it will take some time to, especially the driveway, the fence, and walkway, because you got to go back and redo the survey. All right, 8-day unilateral extension. So last year we put a deadline at 8 p.m. because we figured if you don't close by the closing day by 8 p.m., no wires coming in and out and what have you. So somebody didn't like it, so we removed it. Okay. Buyer may only use for mortgage lender delay, not cost per buyer. That's the only time buyer can extend. A lot of time, I know during pandemic, a lot of agents were using the unilateral as a weapon for 8 more day extension. Well, a lot of time when you cut off your appraisal and your financing contingency short, that may cause you to utilize this because it is not a fault of the buyer, if that's the case, that the mortgage lender was delayed. So this is made it very clear on the 8-day unilateral, you cannot extend as a buyer unless it's not a default by the buyer, is a mortgage lender delay. The other one is seller may only use it for title delay. That may not be resolved by paying money or preventing seller from conveying good marketable title or attorney delay, not caused by the seller. So sometimes the attorney would, before prior to closing. So what happened is when you get your loan, okay, and you get your appraisal, the lender will not order title until the appraisal, in between appraisal and when you guys say, okay, it's good to go, typically 10 days, prior to closing, or sometimes shorter period. I've seen lenders try to get it done in 3 days, simultaneously sending the CD out to the buyer for signature. And what happened in that instance sometimes is that the attorney didn't get a whole lot of notice, because attorney is not going to pull title until lender requests it, for a couple of reasons. When attorney pulls a title, there is a cost. So attorney don't pull the title unless an agent notified the attorney, say, hey, I think we may have an issue on this title. And then attorney may be out of courtesy, pull that because they want to do some preventive maintenance in the front. But typically they do not pull it until lender asks for it. And sometimes, there could be a hidden defect on the property. So what we have run into last couple transaction, of what I saw, was that it's a regular sale, okay? And based on the sale and purchase agreement and the concession, the seller should walk away with about $10,000. So the problem with that is that when the attorney pulled the title, the seller did not notify the selling agent that they did a loan modification during pandemic. During pandemic, there's a lot of people use loan modification because guess what? We have foreclosure moratorium to where the lender cannot foreclose on the seller. And so rather than, having bad credit ratings, stuff like that, the lender went ahead, approached the seller and say, hey, do you need loan modification? So we found out the week of closing that there was a loan modification, and that loan modification was $42,000. So what seller thought they were going to walk away $10,000 now become a negative $35,000 because of loan modification. So that's when we had to pivot and create that into a short sale at that point. So, but long story short, just make sure you understand that title sometimes gets delayed, not due to anybody's fault. It's due to sometimes a lack of the seller informing a seller's agent. So selling agent, if you're going to do a listing property, one of the questions you should ask is, I'm just going down through my checklist, just want to make sure that everything's checked off. Would you mind answering a couple of questions? And just asking a simple question. During your during this whole entire loan process, have you ever done any loan modification for the time of your ownership? If the seller say yes, you might want to, your net to seller might change drastically, because typically that is not in the payoff balance. That is actually addition to the payoff balance that they thought they may have. So I just want you to know that really quick. Also, the 8-day unilateral, you can only use it one time. It can be used by the selling agent or the buyer's agent at any time for these reasons only. You can't just utilize it just because you want to, okay? All right to extend closing date. We changed the paragraph on section B, paragraph 4, and this is what we call universal change for all these contracts here: the purchase and sale, lot, land, new construction, option, and commercial purchase and sale. And basically, it's reiterating what I just talked about. 8-day unilateral, and it can be only used once and used for those purposes as outlined earlier. Let's talk about holder earns money. All the changes were universal on all these forms: commercial purchase and sale, lot purchase, land, new construction, option. Okay. That what we're saying, the fact the holder may represent one of the client, it shall not be a basis for holder not performing any of his duty herein, including but not limited to disbursing earnest money based on a reasonable interpretation of this agreement. Okay. So basically, just because you represent the buyer does not mean you automatically return the earnest money to the buyer if the buyer has defaulted through the contract. And also we talked about banking days. We capitalized banking days. You can see that. And also we stated that the account must draw on a financial institution located in the United States. And also we talked about ACH and change the word notice from a small letter to notice as a capital letter, just to reflect the documentation itself. Okay. Any questions about earnest money? All right. This is an interesting one, and I told this in one of my session with my agents when I taught 2026 SCAR contract. Agency disclosure. F201 is changed to purchase and sell lot, land, new construction option. So it states no broker or in transaction shall owe a fiduciary duty or any other duty to buyer or seller greater than what's set forth in a brokerage engagement and a brokerage relationship in real estate transaction. Okay. So a lot of us has been taught in the past that we owe fiduciary duty. The only person that owes any fiduciary duty in a legal sense are attorneys. Okay. Let me give you a classic example. Okay. So we have a contract and is a cash buyer. So when there's not a loan, the attorney represents the buyer for cash. And throughout this, just make the long story short, throughout the whole entire transaction, the buyer act like they're gonna buy it and gone through their inspection, gone through blah blah blah, everything. And we're gonna line up for closing. And so 2 days before closing, buyer terminated. And first, of course, they terminated based on that they couldn't find basically they turned into assignment. One, that contract never allowed a buyer to do assignment. But because the buyer's relationship with the attorney, because it's cash purchase and the earnest money was being held by attorney, the attorney looked at the contract itself and stated the contract itself was not legitimate, even though throughout the whole entire process, the buyer and seller have act according to its own respective position. And the reason we got gig was that, let's say Joe Smith owned ABC LLC. On tax record, it says ownership, ABC LLC. On the purchase and sale, for some reason, on the seller side, it says Joe Smith. So because the attorney represents the buyer and has fiduciary duty to them, they found loophole in stating that the signer of the contract is not legitimate company who is able to sell the property, even though my argument was that Joe Smith owns ABC, is exclusive owner of ABC LLC. Once again, fiduciary duty between attorney and their cash client is there. So he was able to get away with that and disperse to the buyer, even though the buyer has defaulted. And the reason why the buyer has defaulted is because, once again, he basically tried to reassign the contract to another person of his partner, and the partner decided to pull out at the last minute. And so he terminated the contract based on illegitimate signer for the purchase and sale. So you guys make sure if you have a corporation, make sure you put the corporation name, comma, the signer's name, comma, and their position, meaning whether they're a member, owner, authorized signer, whatever it is, you need to put that next to their name. So we know that is being sold by ABC, by Joe Smith, who is a member of the corporation, because the attorney is going to ask you for those documentations at closing to ensure that the proper signature is on the transfer and title. Any questions? All right, cool. Disclaimer, we like disclaimer because this is where we said that we're not an expert of anything but in real estate. We can connect you. We're the matchmaker for anything you want to know. So this is added to commercial purchase and sale, lot purchase and sale, land, new construction option. Okay. So as you can see in here, okay, we're not a surveyor, appraisal, title search, or a radon specialist, asbestos, mold, moisture, methamphetamine, or any lead-based paint, environmental engineer, soil, all that good stuff. So we like disclaimer because it says we're not the expert in those fields. And if you have concerns based on the inspection report, then let me help you connect the dot to see who is available to give you the right answer based on their licensing. Okay. All right, entire agreement. We changing commercial land, lot purchase, sale, land, new construction option. So we're basically saying that except for any pre-shown compensation agreement or other separate agreement on the payment of broker compensation that is not part of or amended by this agreement, this agreement constitutes sole entire agreement between all parties, supersede all other prior written and verbal agreement, and shall solely rely upon by the buyer and binding upon the party in the successor, heir, and what have you. So no representation, promise, or inducement not included in this agreement or the other document referenced above shall be relied upon or binding upon any party thereto. So what we're saying is that this entire agreement, even though I may have multiple verbal conversation with you about certain things, if it's not in the paper, it doesn't count. Okay, it has to be, and this is where some of my agents ask me about new construction. Well, the on-site agent I talked, this is for our agreement, this is what they're gonna do, and what have you. And I said, did you read the contract? Because if it's not in their special step, something that's outside of their regular agreement, then it doesn't count. So make sure you guys put that in there, okay? We often have a dispute on what is considered clean. So we make changes in purchase, sale, lot, land, and commercial. What we're saying is that at the time of possession, shall the property in a clean condition, free of trash, garbage, debris, construction material, pets, and personal property of seller not otherwise identified in this agreement as remaining with the property. Firewood shall not be considered debris. I don't know about you guys, but I just ordered a cord of firewood. They're $170. They're quite expensive. So we define what's clean. Now, if some of you that do sell in luxury market or in a higher pricing market, you may want to put a special step in your contract to define what is your definition of clean. It can be that seller agreed to hire professional service not to exceed $700 for the final cleaning of the house. All the baseboards should be white, blah, blah, blah. You know, whatever it is that your buyer wants, and that is a picking point for them. So write that, but this is covered just general basic, the property should not be full of trash, personal items, debris, and garage, personal pets. Believe it or not, people have let pets on the property. When Alan and I was doing an REO, one time we found a horse that's very emaciated on a REO property. So anyways. All right, so let's talk about instruction to seller completing this agreement. We're talking about seller disclosure, regular, single family, condo, landlord, new construction. Okay, basically, here's our instruction to the seller. It's, the old language they're on, people don't understand what that means. So we just clarify, say, an improvement on the property. And insists they promptly revise the statement. Okay, what we're saying, if prior to closing, if there's any material changes, okay, seller shall promptly revise the statement and provide it to the buyer. Okay, so that is very clear and took out the old language and some of those. Let's talk about how it should be used by the buyer. All the forms up here applies as a universal change. Okay. is that caveat emptor or buyer beware is a law of Georgia. Buyers should conduct thorough inspection of property if the seller has not occupied or recently occupied a property. So we changed that to make it clear. Seller knowledge of property condition may be limited. Buyer expect to use a reasonable care and inspect the property. So, in the past we have on the seller disclosure on the RE form, we had yes, no, and don't know. So what we did is that we actually define what no is. No is meaning the seller truly don't have any knowledge during their occupation of the property. So if they truly don't know it, they can answer no, and that's what it means. Okay. So we revised it to make it very clear. So seller signature should not be taken as a warranty or guarantee of the actual condition of the property, nor a substitute for buyer doing his own due diligence, meaning inspection. So this is added to the seller disclosure, notice to the buyer. This is to further protect the agent and the brokerage. Any questions? Okay. I know contracts are not fun, y'all. So, but it's good to know these things. So how many of you guys sell in downtown Atlanta where you have a lot of condos? Actually, Henry County is getting a couple of those too right now. Anybody? Okay. If you do, if you don't, I just want you to know that condominium is subject to a master policy insurance. And sometimes the master policy insurance changes. So what we did on here, special approval of property as a condo is subject to a master policy. Excuse me. We just stated that the letter shall be provided to seller no later than the close in the date of closing, because the day of closing is actual transaction is being concluded versus at the time closing, because sometimes we have seller going in at 8 a.m. and sometimes the buyer doesn't come in until 4 p.m. So who is determining the time of closing? The closing is the day of closing. So just FYI. Use approved lender and loan denial letter. This is a good one because how many of you guys are a listing agent here, and oftentimes you get a unilateral with buyers not approved, and that is it. And when you get a lender denial letter, it's very generic. Well, I understand why lender does it because they're trying to protect the client. They're not really telling you why, but they did tell you that it was denied. So selling agent, you need to, before you sign off on the unilateral, you need to find out what is it, the basis for the loan that was denied. Because there are a few incidents where a buyer cannot get their earnest money, and this is in your contract on financing contingency, where if buyer is lacking sufficient fund under the amount of the loan to close. So what happened is lender, when they first approve a buyer, they will double check their banking status to make sure they have enough money to put down. If they need concession, you should be already talking. The buyer's agent should already be talking to the lender, say, hey, what does my buyer need in order to make this work? Because sometimes buyers are pretty tight with their down payment and may need DPA on top of it. And that's the only way that the approval is contingent on is seller making that contribution, the concession. So that is typically verified by the lender up front. So if the buyer went out and decided that they got to spend this money elsewhere and they don't have enough money to come to closing and they got denied, that is not sufficient for the buyer to get an earnest money back. And as an agent, sometimes I see my agent maybe has rebate the buyer, let's say $500 or $1,000, just to make the thing to work. So that does happen sometime. But at the end of the day, that's your all's call. I don't tell you how to do your business, but it does happen sometime. So if buyer has lacked sufficient fund, they cannot get their earnest money back, or buyer has not signed a lease when they did a purchase sale, that this purchase and sale is contingent on them selling their home or lease it out. A lot of time buyer, in order to be very competitive, they'll waive that particular contingency, especially during pandemic. If you send me a contract with lease or sale contingency, it's automatically rejected just because we have so much multiple offers on the property when it's priced right. And so if the buyer elect not to put that in the original contract, and let's say they know they're under contract, it should close next 10 days, and that contract for some reason falls through, is not a reason for a buyer to get their earnest money back. The other one is buyer not have provide lender in a timely manner all the documentation. So if the lender can't get a docs from the buyer, then it's automatically loan denial because not enough evidence to make this loan to go through. Number D, buyer making a purchase adversely affecting the buyer debt to income ratio, meaning they were so excited about closing tomorrow and they decide to go furniture shopping. And even though they didn't buy it, they put it in a layaway. Now that on the credit report, it shows that is a future debt. So tell your client not to do that. If they did that and it disrupt the debt to income ratio, they would definitely not get approved. And just so you know, lender check on the day of closing, verify income, employment, I'm sorry, and also any adverse DTI that on the date of closing. Last one, buyer not meeting occupancy requirements. So of FHA, you guys know when you do a purchase sale, the seller cannot stay at the property if it's unoccupied property for more than 59 days. The buyer has to move in 60 days. Okay. The lender not having complete underwriting the loan request. Typically that happens is when the buyer does not submit paperwork. Lender can pretty much run everything pretty quickly on their back end, but the buyer has given all the document and sometimes explanation why certain things are done the way it was. So those are the requirement for buyer not getting the earnest money back. So agents, seller's agent, you need to find out what is it that the client is not qualified for before you sign the unilateral releasing the funding that may be entitled to the seller may be entitled to it. Okay. All right, that was a long one. So in the past, we have once you're under contract, seller had no rights to basically back out without being default. So now we have probably about, I want to say about, gosh, at least 10 years ago, we changed it. But we always put in 7 days and another 3 days afterwards. So that's a total of 10 days for the seller to figure out whether or not the buyer is able to qualify. So what we did, we shortened that time period to a total of 7 days instead of 10 days. So so just a date change in here. Consumer brochures. If you guys are not in the habit giving your client brochure, please do that because these are pre-written for you. And this is called CYA, Cover Your Asset. And so when you send this, I tell my client, if you get really bored when I have hard time sleep, please read this because it will help you with attain some knowledge. So we correct the error. Had new language in here by accident on customer brochure 19. Instead of saying condo, it reflected new construction. Change the language. Consumer brochure number 31. What new landlord needs to know. There's a new paragraph about insurance while vacant, and we'll go over that just a minute. Right here, we delete all the language in here because it was talking about new construction and re-added the language into a condo instead. In here, CB 31, what landlord needs to know about leasing property. So if you work with a landlord, make sure the policy offers minimum 60 days of vacancy because sometimes it takes the property manager more than 30 days to lease a property based on the landlord requirement. And if anything happened to the property during that period of time, the landlord may not be able to file a claim against their insurance because the coverage only allowed 30 days. And yes, it would be a little more expensive, but you may want to suggest to your client about getting what we call builder insurance. And what that cover is anytime the property is vacant, and also for a lot of different things that's under building protection, stolen equipment, vandalism, stuff like that. So the builder protection does cost a little bit more, but if you have a property that's been sitting vacant for a while, even though you have insurance, you may not be able to claim it. Okay. All right, on the exclusive brokerage engagement, section A, we just change the languages MLS to MLS abbreviation, and also deliver agreement and listing with MLS, where we state that listing above referencing multiple MLS in accordance with the rules of such multiple MLS, which may limit the availability and time duration of marketing option below. This obligation, these limitations will control over any conflicting or inconsistent language contained herein. GARI is for entire state of Georgia, and different MLS has a requirement for agent to get it online. Some are here in Georgia MLS and FMLS is 48 hours. Some may do 3 days, some may do 1 day. So we just left it that as a broad statement. Now, this is an interesting section right here. I don't know if you guys heard talk about some bigger brokerage are talking about pocket listing, basically offered through their own platform and their own marketing. So we changed this to where the seller has a right to immediately public marketing option to the MLS. We can do a delay option. Because sometimes what happens is that let's say the seller is getting ready to go to foreclosure, or they have got the notice, probably got 60 days to play with. And so what they want to do is for you to submit an offer to Open Doors or other non-traditional way of selling. But some of the stipulations on Open Doors that you can't list on MLS. If you do, they will terminate the contract even of the day of closing. So when agent writes a exclusive brokerage agreement, by ruling, you have to put an MLS. Okay. So this is where you can check off if you need to delay marketing exempt option. Okay. Or you can set it's an office exclusive marketing option, meaning similar like pocket listing. And you can put in your special step down the road a seller, all party agree that the seller's broker will advertise this with non-traditional marketing for 30 days. So if you are going to sell it to Open Door and a couple other folks out there, that is a what I call assignment contracts. You can exclude X amount of day for those and not list it in MLS. But make sure your special step reflects that. Okay. But this do give the seller an option to immediate marketing, a delay, or a non-exclusive marketing option, an office exclusive marketing option. And it does give you a period, a timeline. Same thing as here. Okay. Any questions? And because traditionally you'll wonder why would anybody want to do that? It's because some people have certain motivations. Sometimes the property is in a position where it needs a lot of it has a lot of deferred maintenance, and therefore they know that if they put on market, it just disappointment after one another. Or sometimes the seller may have an autoimmune children or family member, and they don't want that much traffic in. Or the seller just don't want the hassle. And when they don't want the hassle, there's price to be paid for convenience. So that's where these come into. In the past, we always had to list it with MLS. Now we have two options. Well, you can do common soon in the past, but the third option is exclusive office marketing option, but it give you a time limit for that. And after that, it will need to go into MLS. Or if your client insisting not to publish an MLS, then you need changes to a non-exclusive. Okay. Any questions? Nobody? Okay. All right, exclusive brokerage engagement agreement. We basically, so with us doing a lot more AI function in our drip marketing CRM, it's basically allows to contact our seller or client or buyer with auto drip marketing campaign and protect us from the do not call list. So on the exclusive brokerage and non-exclusive, we changed section A right here. For purposes in the buyer broker shall mean a broker include broker representing the seller if they are also working with or represent buyer as customer or client. If buyer or buyer broker does not request or accept the full amount of compensation being offered by the seller's broker, if any, the remainder shall be additional compensation to seller's broker. Y'all like, what? What's that mean? So if you're an agent that like to negotiate with your client up front, 6%, you 3% or 3.5%, and the buyer's agent for 3% or 2.5%. Let's say you worked out a deal with a buyer's broker, and it's, because for whatever circumstances, okay, the buyer's broker the buyer really wants this house. And in order to do whatever, they decided that we will pay our own buyer broker the compensation. So your agreement is 6%. So if the buyer broker only take 2%, because that was a buyer brokerage agreement they have with the buyer, remember you can't take more than what your agreement is, the seller's agent automatically gets that one additional percent. So I just want you to know there's no money left on the table for exclusive or non-exclusive. It automatically goes to the seller's agent if the buyer broker only takes 2% and your co-op 3%. Okay. Any questions? Okay. All right, new form. I like this one. Exclusive co-listing agent seller brokerage engagement agreement. So this was created because we have multiple, our families are all over the place. So we may be in Georgia, but one may be in Brunswick, one may be in LJ, one may be in Valdosta, what have you. And because we don't really service those markets, you can actually co-list a property with another brokerage that is outside of yours. Let's say my mom and dad lives in Brunswick and they really want me to handle all the transactions. Then because I don't really service that market, I call another broker locally and say, hey, co-op with me and I'll give you X amount percent. So the beauty of this form here, if you look at it, it talks about who has the exclusive and who's a co-listing broker. This is a new form. So this allows you to become the point of contact for your relationship part, whether mom, dad, niece, cousin, or just a great client that you have decided to go outside of Atlanta market. Going down here, it talks about the compensation for both listing broker. So you could have ABC agency here in Atlanta, and you can have XYZ listing in Savannah or Brunswick. Okay, but it does tell you the total amount seller pays to the seller broker. And here's your breakdown. It's great. And we also add a lease in case of the seller decided, you know what, it's too complicated, we're just going to lease it out from now on. And you will need to specify how this is going to be divided between two listing broker. Okay, you can always put this in a special step. So anyways, I just want you to know, we actually have one that was secured through relationship, a family member, and the property's in Savannah. So they want the agent to handle it, the family member, but yet want the full benefit of Savannah market. And granted, I know that FMLS reciprocate to Savannah. The problem is, if you have an unrepresented buyer, are you able to go down there, drive 4 hours, and show the property? No, you're not. So this is where it comes very handy. The next section talks about roles and division of labor. So it tells you who is doing what exactly on this cool listing. So I really like that. And if there's anything in here on broker activity that's not covered, put in special step, y'all. Okay. Same thing here, negotiate a sale price contract. So it tells you who's going to do it. All right. And of course, signatures. All right. I like that one a lot because we have had folks that doesn't really want to give it up because of relationship piece. So this allow you to co-op with an agent out in Savannah, Brunswick, LJ, and still be the main point of contact for your relationship. Okay. All right. Let's talk about buyer broker engagement agreement. So we modify protection period for all of these and when the compensation is due, working with buyer as a customer. Okay. Here is the language. Basically, the limitation liability shall survive termination agreement. So if the client has terminated, the limitation liability shall survive. Okay. What we're saying, if we do close with a client and there's some gross negligence on your part, the broker and agent, then the maximum amount they can get is basically your compensation, or if the file's not closed, we shall not have liability in excess of $100. Okay, and it's due to cyber fraud. So these are very specific. Agreement with buyer as a customer. We change the language here at the closing of any property, okay, versus above on any property. So instead of doing that, we just refined it a little bit and take out the rest of the language. Didn't really make sense. All right, warranties, right to extend, closing, holder earns money, agency disclosure, disclaimer, entire agreement. That is all delivered, and property delivered in clean condition. All we covered that earlier, so I'm not gonna go over it. You guys understand the difference between new construction deposit and earnest money? New construction deposit is basically non-refundable. So as liquidated damages, because there is true cost for the builder when a buyer decided to terminate. I don't know if any of y'all deal with Tolles Brother, and not to badmouth any new construction at all. Tolles Brother do high-end products. Their average sale is around about 700 plus, over $1 million. So one thing they do, they make you put, I believe it was 20% down and 40% is up front when you sign a contract with a 60% on personal guarantee if you decide not to purchase. So they're going to go after your money, the 20%, if you don't buy. And that 40% up front is automatically given. So they'll put a lien on your personal name because it's a personal guarantee. So I just want you guys to know on new construction, please read their contract very carefully, because I had an agent call me about it and wasn't distraught. Say, what do you mean personal guarantee? I'm like, it's the very first page of the contract. So So I told them their recourse was to go ahead and purchase it and turn around, sell it. They may take a little bit of loss, but nowhere near 100,000 plus. So anyways, all right, cool. Counter offer, it's always been here, but we put the extra language in here. Basically, all dates references for a clean copy. All day references conform or clean copy shall be the date reflected in the binding agreement rather than the day the conform or clean copy is signed. So if you sign the binding agreement on December 1st, but you did a clean copy on December 10th, the December 1st is technically the accepted date. Okay. Just clarification language. Agreement to reinstate contract, we have that right now, but we didn't put in a timeline deadline because sometimes, if you don't put a deadline on it, then that means we agree to reinstate contract indefinitely. And typically, most people act pretty quickly when they get this back in. They'll either decide they're going to do it or they're not going to do it. But this help with setting expectation for all parties. All right, sell disclosure. I personally have a propane tank that's rented. And so if it's rented, you need to include it. We change the language, local government authority on the sewer and plumbing to health department or other government authority. This is where we change a lot. Water intrusion, exclude water intrusion caused by plumbing or physical damage. So there's just a lot of change in here. And they even asked about retention ponds. Your property falls 100 to 500-year floodplain as designated by a federal emergency management agency, all that stuff. So you guys will see it, but I just want you to know on the water intrusion part, they did change a lot of that. Latent defects, we also add in here caveat or buyer beware is a law of Georgia, and this disclosure may not be modified by the buyer. There were times in some instances where buyer go in here after seller completed this and they modify the disclosure. So this is not a modification by the buyer. This is for seller to sign and given all the knowledge they have. Lead-based paint. This is a biggie, y'all. Last year, the way it was written on Section G, if the seller is paying your compensation directly, you, the buyer agent, has to initial it and give them a notice, F317. Next year, it is required, period. Whether or not you're getting compensation directly or indirectly, meaning co-op, from the seller. So Section G, buyer's agent, new lead-based paint, you have to sign it, initial it regardless. Okay. And while this is not in here in Section C, where it talks about buyer has to receive all information, if any, listed above, what that language was a reflection of Section A and B, where the seller has answered those questions. Whether it is yay or nay, is still knowledge from the seller to the buyer. So that Section C always has to be initial by the buyer. And if you do your buyer brokerage agreement correctly, your lead-based paint pamphlet should have been part of your CB consumer brochure that you give to your buyer every time. And so Section D would apply. All right. This is the F317. Buyer's brokenness to seller obligation. Allow buyer agents say, but I don't have seller's email address. So understand a notice to the seller agent is a notice to the seller. So this is for the buyer broker to sign and send it in to the seller's broker. This will be a required form for any property that is listed prior to 1978 because this goes in line with the new lead-based paint, Section G. So a little more document? Absolutely. But the fine for lead-based is $18,000, y'all, per mistake. It's not worth it. Just do it. Okay? We didn't make the rule. Federal did.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a listing coming up, and the seller, the house was built prior to 1978, but the seller went in and took refer. I mean, she had the whole house gutted out. So what do you do on that? Yes, it was built before 1978, but how do you address that?
So we did the same thing. We flipped a property in Historic College Park. We took it all the way down to the stud. Okay. There was nothing left but the stud. But because the federal requirement, we went ahead and did lead-based paint to be on the safe side.
Oh, okay.
And then on the seller disclosure, we will state house was stripped down to the stud. The house was built prior in 1978, and therefore here's a disclosure. But we don't believe there's any lead-based paint at this time because we stripped it literally down to the stud. All
Oh,
the
okay.
walls, the roofing was all brand new and HVAC. There was no cabinets that was there prior to 1978. But at the same time, full disclosure, and it's called CYA, cover your asset.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Good question. So this is, you guys, anything 1978, please go ahead, just send this in with your contract. That is a notice to the seller through seller's agent. HOA, change a lot of language in here again to make it more clear and concise. I'm not going to read it because due to time constraint. I just want you to know in here they changed the community to condominium association. And here they changed the association homeowner, so they distinguish what they are. Okay. And also definition, a community defined. And instead of saying, oh, sorry, define, it says the purpose. Okay. And once again, these changes are done because agent has run into issue because some folks are more legalistic, and when they look at certain things, they said this doesn't make sense. So all these suggestions the agent give out to forms committee throughout a year, they do get collaborated into a list, and then look at the GAR form, make sure it is done properly. And I'm not saying anything derogatory or negative, but if you don't have the GAR form and not a member of Realtor, please buy the GAR form. To me, that's an investment for your business. Just because RE form is not always updated every year, is a due to the complement of the GAR committee that sometimes it gets updated. So, but the GAR form is updated every year to protect us from liability and to make the language a little more clear. And no, I'm not here to sell the GAR form. I'm just telling you it's best practice. So community association disclosure, they changed some of these things to become a little more defined. So it is talking about master association here and what have you. That's section A. So section B, it reflects all the changes we have had on section B of section A in the definition of it and what is a regular assessment and what have you. They took out a lot of these things out just because it did not make sense. And here's special assessment. Special assessment are for like high ticket item, the roof, the street light, the pool lining, which is typically not a yearly maintenance, what have you. Or the gym equipment, if you're in downtown Atlanta where it's a concierge service, they have a lot more stuff that they maintain as an HOA. Okay, let's see. And this is basically the definition for this fill in blank. And this is explanation for that fill in blank on special assessment. Transfer initiation administration fee is basically reflecting section A5 because of a redundancy in there. Other association expenses, closing letter, move in, move out fees is all defined very clearly in here. I'm gonna go really quick after this. So new form 331 unsafe property. How many times do y'all have property sometime that could be the railings questionable? Or because we had a hot month and the HVAC wasn't working, now we got surface mold. Those are unsafe items, y'all. And also, if you work with an investor, buy any property sight unseen is great. This relieve you guys of liability and giving notice to the buyer. Here's unsafe. Okay, new form. And the other one is sorry, I don't have example of it. I thought I did. So there are two new form in 2020 that are very similar. Visitor sign-in sheet, viewing a house under construction. That's kind of like the whole harmless. But I just want you to see that really quick. Visitor sign-in sheet, viewing a house under construction. This is a buyer, this is it. F334 buyer property sight unseen. Okay, take us out of the liability, which I love. No financing. We changed the word amendment to purchase price from the amendments to sale price. So the difference is this word right here. And of course, all the abbreviation that come with it on section B. F10. If an individual attorney who works for a law firm is named, basically, let's say Deborah Kalish or Tua Bartley, they both are member of Lula Larkin Hunter. So if you name Tua or Deborah Kalish, then we understand that you're closing with Lula Larkin Hunter, not necessarily with the individual attorney. I love this from a brokerage standpoint, just so you know. This is, and then we may use this form twice. This deal with earnest money. Basically, we're saying the buyer has failed to deliver earnest money. Okay. The buyer earnest money payment has been NSF, or the buyer has not cured the default. Okay. Very simple for the holder. And you guys make sure if you don't have the earnest money, whether you're a seller's agent or the buyer's agent, it doesn't matter. You need to let whoever the holder know, hey, where's the earnest money? Because attorneys sometimes don't watch these things and they won't give notices because one, they haven't signed FI-11. Some refuse to sign FI-11 until they got the money. Or two, they just not watching their timeline. Their business is close the deal, full title, make sure everything's clear. Earnest money is a convenience thing for a lot of agents, not necessary for the attorney. They keep it because they want you to close there. All right. That's the same thing as this form here. Sale and lease contingency. So we modified it, okay, to make it a little more clear. Basically, that if we don't sell or lease a property within the time limit, the buyer is automatically determined at the time, and buyer shall be entitled to the return of any earnest money without penalty, because a contingency is just another requirement that needs to be fulfilled before purchase and sale is solid, right? So if you have this lease or sale contingency on a property, if this portion of the contingency is not fulfilled, then it's a dead contract. Okay. So I just want you guys to know that some agents are unfamiliar with that. So we took the section C out because it doesn't make sense. Okay. And we did add a kick-out clause in here. All right. Here is, we changed a word in 2025. It says a proof of fund from the buyer. Proof of fund can be a 401k or stock. Okay, just because you have proof of fund doesn't mean you can withdraw those funds within those timeline. So we changed the word to proof of evidence of ability to close, meaning you can get that money out. Okay. Amendment to remove inspection contingency. This is for not for a contract that has due diligence. Okay. This was really popular during pandemic because people was waiving a due diligence but has a right to inspect the property still. Okay. But just because they have the right doesn't mean they have the right to request anything other than latent defects. So you got to read that language very carefully. And this is the language for it. Owner property disclosure statement. We change everything in the sale portion. Same with the lease, except we change, of course, from a seller to tenant to owner and buyer to tenant. That was a correction in it. And this is sample of the disclosure, same as the other one. I just want to pull it up for y'all to see it. Lease for residential property or lease for lease purchase. We add a fee. Oh, sometime when you have tenant move in, they won't change the water. I don't know if you guys ever rent in Fulton County and Clayton County. Their deposit is quite steep. And so sometimes the tenant just won't switch it over because the deposit is so steep. They'll just pay the landlord the fee. But just so you know, if you ever do lease, you have the right to charge a tenant a fee for every month the utility is not connected. Okay, for those who do lease. Administration fee. So the reason why they added additional rent for holding over, the word rent allows the landlord to evict if not pay, but administration fee does not. So that's why they changed the word additional rent for holding over versus just holding over. Okay? Because if a tenant refuses to leave, what are you going to do? The old language was hold over rate. This is what I'm going to charge you. Well, you can charge that all day. Doesn't mean you'll collect it. So if we put rent, this allow the landlord to evict them. Lead-based paint, we just add a language in here for the link. And we talk about tenants should not have hot tub, trampoline, swimming pool, swing set, bouncy house, and zip line. Okay. From keeping any animal on the property. You'd be amazed. Sometimes people call goats and sheep and chicken and rabbit or snake or whatever as emotional support pets. Okay. So if you don't understand landlord and tenant law and you're thinking about going property management, please take some notes on it and take some classes. And also the tenants prohibited from being in a campfire within 50 feet because the house has burned down in the past because of it. They would just, they thought the ember has died down, so they went to bed. And next, within a couple hours, the house caught on fire. For those of you who do commercial, we actually added a commercial tenant buyer brokerage engagement agreement, which is good. Sorry. Right here, walk through list. Not all municipalities, this will be my last one real quick. Not all municipalities, especially in rural area, has certificate of occupancy for new builders. So when that happened, like Madonna, when I moved here about 20 plus year ago, um, Home Depot wasn't even here on exit 221. So there was a lot of rural area. And because the building permit department did not have the, I guess, resources, there were some property built way back when that did not require CO. So what we're saying is that if you're a new buyer and you are doing a walkthrough and there's so much, things that are not being done, the buyer can delay closing if the cost is more than 5,000. So the seller can force a buyer to close the property if the cost is less than $5,000. So I just want you to know that is coming online for some of our rural area. Okay. And yes, we delete the no commission owed by the buyer because NAR lawsuit does not allow it. But with that, this is overall summary. If you want to know the more full-on detail, attend one of my 2026 SCAR contract. Anybody have any question right now?
Good morning,
Carla?
Ming. This is Carla. I do.
Hey, what you got?
Okay, I need to go back to the F316, and we didn't discuss the page one of the lead-based paint, but
Mhm.
on our side, we ask all the buyers just the initial three times, but other brokers, I always have a problem with this, and they always initial twice because they said on C, if we do not give them details about the lead-based paint, their brokers do not require them to initial C. So, is it
That's
a rule
fine.
for?
That's fine. So what I ask of those agents and their broker, please respond back to this email letting me know you refuse to have your client initial this because information was given on A and B. And the email back say, I refuse. I actually have a couple of those emails, just so you know. And what I do, I just print a PDF and upload on file. I'm calling it a day.
Okay.
It's not my violation that I given notices, I given you know, not every brokerage understand Section C. And if they don't take any classes on it, they won't know. But I want you guys to be on top of your game and not cost you or anybody else a fine because the lack of knowledge.
Okay, that's fine. And part, I have another question about it as well.
Sure.
When we list the property, we're supposed to get this lead-based paint form signed up front and initial the CB 04 if possible. But the other brokers, they do not have it up front and they do not put it in MLS. So is that a requirement as well?
So best practice from our standpoint, have it because technically that needs to be signed prior to binding by the buyer. If you read the form, it says prior to binding. The brochure and the piece of information from the seller should be given prior to binding.
Right. I always have to fight to get that form.
Uh,
So I'm just trying to
y-
make sure.
you're in that unique area.
Sorry.
and and not everybody understand. And yes, you will get a lot of fight on it. And just say if you refuse to do this, which is fine, please send an email me, do an explanation, and say if you refuse to do this, this is fine. Just send me an email say you refuse to have your buyer sign, and that liability will go to the other broker because we hadn't informed them what the rules are. Because if I was EPA can walk in my office today, say, I want all your files for the last 3 years that has homes that you sold. That was prior to 1978. And by law, I have to pull every one of those files and give it to them.
Right.
And what they do, you know how some regulation makes their money, right?
Yes.
Through fines. That's how they
I
sustain.
get it. I get it. I just always have to beg to
The,
get it. So, okay, no problem.
it's okay. You're not the only one. Welcome to my world.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody have any questions about the forms, adjustments? What's your feedback on the new ones? I really like the co-listing because it allows you to practice outside of your metro area and understand what is and some of y'all say, why don't we just do a referral? Well, when you do a referral, you're giving a control to the new agency and you don't have the right to negotiate. So this actually keep you in the loop with your client that you have the relationship with, whether it's a family member or what have you.
Ming, I guess people got to understand this is only for Georgia. We can't use these forms to extend over in another state, especially, because we're not licensed in those states, right?
Correct. You have to practice in the state that you're licensed in. And there, I would tell you, Georgia's probably got the best form committee as far as contract goes. There's a lot of state that look at our contract or start imitating it. We probably have the most variety of forms available to our agents. There are some, prior to the lawsuit, they didn't have any buyer brokerage agreement at all. So
How does the credit work with that when you're co-listing? Is it the main one who controls as far as you
It's
get?
okay. So let me go back to this form real quick so you can see it. Find Sudden C. So it actually lay out the responsibility of each person. Here it is. Here's the compensation. This is total seller pay. Okay, and this is the split, which y'all agree on. The next page talks about who is responsible. It can be listed both 1 and 2. One's in Atlanta market, one's in Savannah market, the Golden Isles. Who's putting a lot box? The Golden Isle is, because that's where property is. Who's putting it for sale? The Golden Isle maybe do that, or both of y'all, but I seriously doubt you want to drive all the way to Savannah, put your sign up. That's a reason for the co-oping. Marketing material, both of y'all can do it in your market. So you just got to specify what is the expectation for each one of the prospective brokers.
So you can have 2 boxes there?
Yeah.
Because I know in Savannah they have like a special
Uh-huh.
like box that you can't get in unless you're part of that Savannah market.
Well, yeah, if you're not a member of broker of Savannah market, since then they have changed some of the things, just so you know, because I made a
Oh,
complaint
really?
one time. Well, yeah, the MLS lot box. This is what I'm saying. If the property, it doesn't make sense for you to put your Georgia Super up because it won't work in Golden Isle agents.
Yeah.
So this is why you have these division of responsibilities. Because what's most convenient for that property? It would be the Golden Isle Super lot box. And it'll make sense for them to do for sale. Hey, you guys, when you do this, you may want to put special stip to where if the buyer's unrepresented, you may want to get a portion of that referral back. Because without your listing, they will never have an unrepresented buyer, right? So you may want to think about that. This is just you. I'm just telling you on referral back on those things. Like I said, I thought it was great. Negotiating contract. This prevent you from going to broker 1, broker 2. We know who is in control of negotiation. This is my family. They already told me what they want. Now I will talk to the broker on Savannah and ask them what's the current market like? Are you giving concessions with this price point? Are you doing this? What is, and I would talk to the broker and see what is the best way to negotiate. But ultimately, I am the negotiating broker for the property. And what the broker in Savannah needs to do is said for all negotiation refer to ABC agency with, Carla with ABC agency, whatever it is. And you can do that in private remarks and vice versa. On broker 1, it said for show instruction. If you have showing time, typically you can let the seller control it, or you control it, or the other broker control it, depending on what the circumstance is. Make sense? And just like I have one right now, this didn't came online this year. So attending inspection of property, I am not driving 4 hours to winterize and make sure the spigot is being covered, because right now we have a lot of busted pipe here in Atlanta because some folks did not cover the spigot last night. I'm not driving out there, so that would be a performance by second broker if I have any issues.
Ming, I guess this form would be good if like, because sometimes we have some people in the brokerage, one is realtor and one is realty. So this would kind of fix this now, right? If we're in the same brokerage.
This is more, you can do that. Yes, it is anytime you are not with the same, I guess, office code as whoever you're referring to. It can be ABC Company Realty or XYZ, or it can be ABC non-board, ABC board, whatever it is. As long as there's a difference between the company name and their tax ID. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Because each company has a different tax ID, whether you're born on. We did that to be in compliance,
Mhm.
even though you may have the same broker, doesn't matter.
Yes, two different companies.
Correct. It's about the tax ID and the registry with Greg and your codes. The rest y'all have no questions? Anybody else? Okay. If nobody have any questions, please come to my 2026 guard contract. And love to see you. We'll dive into more detail this. And I wish y'all keep it warm today and have a happy Monday. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Hey, Ming,
Yeah, Ken.
what's that date for your contracts class?
Thank you, Maine.
You're welcome. If you go to mx1training.com,
Okay.
there's multiple being offered. I just don't know what location you would like to go.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. If you want to, I'll get Nancy send you a link, or I'll text you a link real quick.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thanks, Ming.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming to the Christmas party. I enjoy hanging out with y'all. And yes, Shoni, we miss. Oh, you're not here now. We miss the Shoni outfit. She does it every year, except this year. So, all right, y'all have a wonderful Monday.
Thank you.
Bye bye.